perfect, isn't it? You know, the life of a pastry chef is actually one of tragedy and romance. You see this wedding cake. You've been involved with pastries all your life, and all of a sudden the wedding cake comes into your life. And look at it. It's perfect. It's beautiful. You want to put it on a pedestal. And even though you're involved with a really sweet carrot cake, this is the one. It's true love. Sad, isn't it? Well, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. Hi, we've reached the Daubney Inn in the year 1812, and we're going to help Miss Muffin prepare her wedding feast. Miss Muffin is really not her real name. It's a name given to her by her beau, a young British officer who's the catch of the day. She was named Miss Muffin because she was sweet, soft, and warm. So let's get inside and begin. What a fascinating place. The inn was the hot spot of the town for all the news. If only these walls could talk. Napoleon was actually in full retreat from Moscow. The Americans had moved into Canada starting the War of 1812. The first ketchup recipe was published in the United States by James Mees, even though a lot of people believed that tomatoes were poisonous. And the hot cookbook of the time was called L'Art de Cuisiner by Antoine de Villiers. And you try saying that 10 times fast. Anyway, we got to get started. We're getting ready, and we're in the back parlor of the inn. And we're going to help with this feast, and there are 3 courses that you would normally have for something like this. The first one is called the appetizer. The second one is the entremets. You notice the use of French, very popular in the courts those days. And the last one is the pièce de résistance. We've all heard that, but really it refers to the major meat dish. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the appetizer. We're going to make a starter, starting off with smoked salmon. Boy, are we lucky to have some wonderful smoked salmon. And what we're going to do is 2 different recipes, very quick and very easy. The first one, you don't even have to use a fire or your stove or anything to start it, because we're just going to use herbs. And boy, if you can get these herbs fresh, it's fantastic. We have parsley, we have tarragon, and let's say you can't get those herbs fresh. It's the wintertime. Well, you can always get the ground up herbs such as the rosemary and the savory. And all you have to do is simply grind it up in your mortar and pestle, because you don't want to be chewing those, especially if they're rubbed. And you want to have it almost like a powder form. And those herbs are going to bring out some incredible flavors in your salmon. And you can use both in tandem if you like as well, depending on what you have available. Now, one thing about tarragon that's kind of interesting, just to show you the pioneer spirit in cooking, the tarragon leaves are, of course, what you want to actually use for flavor. But sometimes the end of the leaves are a little bit old, and so what you want to do is just break them away and use the rest of the leaf. So we're going to break off these leaves from the parsley and from the tarragon, but we can also use about 2 ounces of dried parsley, margarine, chervil, 1 ounce of thyme, lemon thyme, basil, summer savory, and as I said, 1 ounce of tarragon. We're just going to break these leaves off into our plate here. The salmon is very easy to prepare. All you need is a good sharp knife. We're just going to take that salmon and score some lines across that salmon so that we can actually stuff it with our herbs. And boy, is that going to release some flavors, I can tell you. So we simply take our herbs and stick it into the holes where we've scored it. And it's going to look great, and it's really going to release some incredible flavors with every bite. So we just stick it in there, like so. Makes a great garnish, but it's also a great flavor. And there we are. And if we do have some of the herbs that we've ground up, we can season it just a little bit with that as well, just to give it that extra flavor and, of course, an extra interesting look. Doesn't that look fantastic? And you know what? That's it. It's prepared and it's ready to be eaten. salmon dish is just as quick and easy as the last one. What we're going to do is we're going to make an egg sauce that's very traditional. And all you need is your piece of salmon to start, which is wonderful, and it's already on its way to being superb. But what we're going to do is we're going to boil 3 eggs over the fire for about 12 minutes. Once they've boiled, we're going to put them in the cold water to let them settle. Because when you do that, it allows the egg easier access. We can break it quite easy. Now watch. We're going to take those eggs and just simply break them and peel them. And once we've broken them and peeled them, we're going to be able to separate the yolk from the egg white. And actually letting them sit in cold water is going to make the yolk much firmer, which is a real benefit to us. So we've opened one up, and as you can see, I've got another 2 right over here. And so we're going to take our egg, and we're simply going to cut it. So cut it, and look at that yolk. It comes out just like that. We're going to put the yolk into our saucepan, an 1812 saucepan, which looks a lot like a bowl. What a coincidence. And we're going to start to actually take those 3 yolks and just sort of squeeze them together and break them apart. And it's going to be really, really nice when we're done. See, it almost forms a paste, which is great when you're working with a sauce. A lot of color too, which is going to enhance the whole look of the fish, because food's supposed to be a feast for the eyes, not just for the palate. And that's what we're doing. And look at that. Here's the fun part for me. You only need 3 egg yolks, but just 2 egg whites. So 1, 2, easily disposed. Ooh, start again. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take our egg whites and we're going to dice them. To add a little texture and color and flavor to the whole thing. Throw that into our saucepan as well. And there you have them, and you mix them together just a little bit. You don't want to crush those egg whites at all. And now we're going to add 1 pint of butter that's been simmering over the fire, and we've actually taken it off the fire and put it onto a trivet. Trivet's like a little stand that stays near the fire. It actually keeps it really warm, so that's what we're going to do. I have to admit, I really like this kitchen utensil. You can cook anything on it, and here we're going to pour it in now. Lovely melted butter. Put this back to the trivet where it stays warm. Again, mix it together just a little bit. If you want to add salt or pepper, that's totally up to you. We might even add some of those herbs just to give it some color. And now we're going to take our piece of salmon and just lay it out over our salmon like so. And all that wonderful butter and egg. It's going to just ooze over there. It's going to look absolutely fantastic, and it's going to taste tremendous. And if we want to, we can take a few herbs, sprinkle it over the top. Let's give it a little bit more interesting character. And if we had some parsley, why not add a little bit of parsley again, just to add a little bit of character to it. Break up some parsley by hand, lay it out over the center. And voila, again, set in record time, which is very fortunate because it's time to work on the pièce de résistance with our special guest, Sue McLean. So, we'll be right back right after this. Here in the Dobby Inn in the tap room with our very special guest, Sue Spencer McLean. Sue, you live this entire life. You write about it, you talk about it, but you live it, don't you?
Yeah, you can find me pretty well every weekend, all summer long, from May almost through to the end of October, at someplace doing this, doing the War of 1812 particularly, and throughout Eastern Canada and the Eastern United States.
With museums and special events.
And historical reenacting.
Excellent. Well, we're going to reenact a feast here today. We have a wonderful pièce de résistance dish, a duck
roast duck.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful. This is a marvelous size of duck. It's I guess about 4 pounds.
4 pounds, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nicely sized. You don't want oversized leg muscles because the legs tend to get a little tough if you get that. Nowadays we'd say 1 duck for 2 people, but of course back in my time, 1812, we stretched it a little farther than that. So the first thing we're going to do, if we're going to tag this duck, is to reach right down inside and clean it out. Get all of the guts and innards out, and those will go into our stock pot for making duck soup.
So I understand you're a big Julia Child fan, so
yes.
Always save the liver, right?
Save the liver. Save the liver and clarify the butter. Alrighty, and we'll also take off this neck because it's not a terribly attractive thing, and it doesn't have a lot of good meat on it. That actually makes an excellent part of the stock.
Wow.
And something else that was often done was to take off these little wingtips here.
Oh, gee, that's my favorite part. They're nice and crunchy.
Well, you'd like duck cracklings, then. We'll do that some other day.
Oh, okay.
But they have a little bit of fat in them. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of meat on them, but they make a nice addition to the stock, give it that little extra bit of flavor.
Oh, great.
Since you like them, we'll leave them.
Oh, great. Okay, super.
Okay. Now, the other thing we have to look for on the duck is you see how there's a little feather bit left here?
Yeah.
Now, if there's just a few left, you can just reach in and pull them out with your fingertips. But if you find yourself, which is frequently the case, and especially around the ankles and the neck area, with a number of feathers, you can actually put melted beeswax
right
over your duck.
Oh.
Let it harden, and then just strip it right off.
Oh.
There we go. There's one more that's coming out here.
This looks like a really tender duck. I understand that the females are more tender than the drakes, the males.
That's right. That's right. Apparently, it's got something to do with the development of the leg muscles. Apparently, the drakes have larger leg muscles. So if you can get a female duck, 4 or 5 pounds is as big as you want to go, because after that, they do become quite tough.
Right.
They're not a tender bird like a chicken.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Anyway, so the next thing we need to do is wash this.
All right.
All right. All right, there we are, one freshly washed duck. I usually wash it in hot water. It just seems to work better, makes the duck feel better.
Oh, well, he looks fine to me. How you doing, duck? All right. Okay. Carry on.
All right. Now, we're going to do this duck today in a reflector oven, which is one of the neatest tools that we had around for use. It actually improved the efficiency of the cooking over the fire by 100% at least, probably 200 to 300%. Today, of course, you could do it in your regular oven.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have those reflector ovens, but you know, they're very interesting. People who have fireplaces might just reconsider.
Absolutely. Yeah. When the power goes out, next ice storm,
yep,
there you go. You're set.
All right, well, let's take a look at that oven.
Alrighty. There we are. This is the reflector oven. As you can see, it's got a spit on it that we'll use to stick the duck on. Turn. And as you can see on the outside here, there are a number of little holes that you can use. This is adjustable. This is the actual handle of the spit. You pull it out and adjust it to the next hole so that your duck turns just ever so slightly every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes. It's really useful because you can actually stall your duck as it's turning around so that the breast gets more heat than the legs. As you can see from the inside here, it's relatively shiny, and they're newer, they're a little shinier, but as they get older, they develop this most wonderful patina. This actually catches and reflects the heat and throws it back onto the bird or the ham or the roast beef steak that you're doing, and reflects the heat, makes it hotter inside. But of course, then you have the extra invention of, if it gets too hot, you have a window you can open to let the extra heat out so you can roast something long and slow. When the bird is done and removed, you can actually just lift up the oven and pour from the spout into a bowl or a pitcher from which you can separate out your fat for cooking and your drippings for making gravy or cracklings. Through the neck cavity and out through the bottom. All right. Now you wonder why I'm doing this before we stuff it.
Yeah, that's unusual. Most people don't do that.
Because it's easier. I'm a big fan of easy. Now what I've got here is a length of cotton and a poultry needle. Now it looks a lot like a darning needle, but it's a lot sharper. And you can get them actually in lengths about this long, but I find that I'm sufficiently uncoordinated. I managed to stab myself with the long ones, so I prefer the shorter ones. Now what we're going to do is go right in first in front of the leg, so more or less through the hip joint there, then through the inside of the bird, and out through the hip joint on the other side, in approximately the same place. You can trust your modern ducks like this too. It works really quite well. But this is a particularly good truss for keeping it on this thing, which is always just a bit of a challenge.
Sure.
You don't want to be making soup by accident. All right, so now we're ready to do our stuffing.
Great. So, what's in our stuffing?
Well, we can put in a whole bunch of things. You've chopped me some wonderful onions.
Yep, which melts and it's wonderful. I understand you shouldn't actually stuff it in too much because then it'll just contract. Is that right?
That's correct. Absolutely. A nice loose stuffing, not so it's going to fall out, but a nice loose stuffing is better because then, especially if you're using breadcrumbs, which we are, they'll actually expand, soak into the bird better.
Great.
We've also got some tarragon and some sage, some fresh bay leaf. We can also, if you want to fancy it up, you can put in some sliced apple and even raisins if you like. What we've got here is some grated bread.
Which has been done by, some of the assistants here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those poor fellas. We can use grated bread. We can also use torn bread. Okay. Or a nice substitute is wild rice.
Oh yeah.
If you are you going to use wild rice, so you stuff it with duck very, very loosely, because the rice expands.
That's right. I've seen that in television shows where the pot just explodes.
Exactly, and you don't want your duck to explode. So very, very loose stuffing. So if you throw some of those in there, and meanwhile I'm going to grind up. I've got some black peppercorns in here.
I have to admit, of all the stuffings, the onion and sage stuffing is one of my favorites.
There you go. I like it as well. But sometime you might try putting the orange in it. It's all the difference.
At Christmas time.
At Christmas time. Yeah. All right, then we've got some black pepper. Now, if you would like to grind up some allspice for me,
all right.
There's some right here. Now, when you're grinding the allspice, be careful to cover over the top of the mortar and pestle with your hand because allspice.
Little cylindrical.
They're little cylindrical. That's right.
Shrapnel.
That's right. And they also, the whole ones like to pop out and hit your nose. So, while you're doing that, I'll take a couple of bay leaves. And I'm actually going to put the bay leaf right into the duck, one in the front cavity. I know that you said you don't normally stuff it, but that's just a little flavoring. And one into the back. So, right, just toss her in there. Terrific. All right, we'll throw in some sage. I'm just going to grab some of these leaves and rip them up for me. Sure. Just not whole leaves, but about a third of the leaves, and the tarragon as well. We'll do the same with that. All right. Oh, boy, that smells good.
It's pretty amazing. You can actually smell the flavor of the duck already, as well as all these wonderful ingredients.
And if you find yourself with too much stuffing, try and get more of the onions and the herbs and things in than the breadcrumbs.
Right.
And if you make a mess, don't worry, it's all going to fall off. Because we're on a spit, we have a little bit more of a challenge because we have to help it stay on the spit.
That's right.
So we will go through the ankles. Then instead of closing this tail up this way, we'll actually bring the needle through up here, our little neck, at the top. Above the leg on one side. Thank you. Above the leg on one side, through the little hole, and below the leg on the other side. Through the hole, and out through the neck on the other side, or the shoulder, if you like. Now we're ready.
All right.
To go to the oven.
Excellent. To the oven we go. You will be. I don't know, I'm somewhat mesmerized. Facetiously speaking, Mary O'Brien sends us an email from 1812, and she actually didn't have the luxury of having a reflector oven or even a rotisserie on her dogs over at the stove, and she suggested taking worsted wool and twisting it and putting it through the duck and then hanging it on the crane or maybe on a hook over the heart.
Let's go.
We're going to go through the top first?
Yep.
All right.
Don't let go till I tell you to.
Okay. All right.
All right.
How's he working his way through there? Oops, I don't want to let go.
Don't let go. There we are.
Got it?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, we're going to put it through.
All right, and the reason we go this way rather than the other way is our legs are what tends to be tough.
Ah, okay.
So you want everything to run down, all the juices run. There we go.
On the side of the
There,
dog.
and there she goes.
And it works. Boy, does that ever rotate. While those ducks are cooking, everybody's getting into the act. We've got the stable boy over here from the drive shed, and he's actually making a turnip flup with the young lady here who is our scullery maid. And what he's doing is, after having boiled turnips or rutabagas, which is the bigger version of them, he's taking them out and putting them into a bowl and basically mushing them together. The young lady is actually taking apples that we've dried at the fire, boiling them in water until they become an applesauce. And what they're going to do is combine the two and maybe add some sugar, maple sugar most likely at the time, and it's going to be a wonderful turnip fluff served warm like a casserole. It's going to be absolutely fantastic along with our duck and all the other things we've made today. So do you want to mix them together and see what happens? Here she goes. We'll be back shortly to see how our ducks turned out. The Regency wedding in Canada was a community affair, often held in winter or early spring, when life on the farm slowed down. Many ministers traveled the circuit from town to town, making group weddings the norm. After paying the minister in goods and a village procession, it was off to the local inn for good food, including a syllabub made of fresh whipped cream and sweet wine, simple gifts, and that special Canadian tradition, a chèvrerie, or roasting of the groom by masked marauders. And finally, the wedding night. Oh, stop right there. Stop, save that for the After Hours channel. We'll just stop there. And more cake. I'm embarrassed. I didn't cook this way, shall we? True love. Well, we hope you enjoyed your visit, and until next time, we're history. South America's chocolate was a closely guarded Spanish secret for over 300 years. By 1700, the secret was out in France and in England. The hot bitter chocolate drink outstripped coffee in popularity. Why? Because it was considered an aphrodisiac.